The last big week of releases before things begin to slow down, where in addition to Metroidvanias, farming games, action-adventure, Souls-likes, rhythm games and much more, we also have a little show named the Game Awards and its associated showcases, where I'm fairly certain that there will be surprise releases there, so plenty to look forward to, beginning with ADRIFT, an off-road adventure driving game where you slide behind the wheel of a rugged truck and set out into dusty canyons, sweeping sand dunes and craggy desert plains with fragile cargo strapped behind the cab, navigate twisting roads and open terrain while taking care of the mysterious energy core. Because every minute in the desert brings it closer to failure, the vehicle responds to real physics-based drifting and handbrake mechanics, so the handling feels weighty and realistic, improvising shortcuts or switching routes as you explore. The world does hide secrets which you can uncover as you make your way through the barren yet haunted landscape, dotted with relics of a lost civilization scattered across dunes and canyons, providing an intriguing setting for your desperate journey. I just made a video on incremental games, so they are on my mind, with Outhold looking to be of note, a minimalist, incremental tower defense strategy game where you defend a dwindling holdout against endless waves of foes, using towers, upgrades, and tactical builds. The core loop begins when towers are placed to fend off attackers, and resources gathered from defeated enemies are reinvested into stronger defenses. A sprawling upgrade tree drives each attempt, with full refunds being available for every upgrade, so you can experiment freely, mixing and matching towers and enhancements to discover powerful synergies. Choices range from focusing all resources into a single tower to building diverse arrays that complement each other, granting the freedom to change up your playstyle between brute force and layered strategy. Between runs, there are some permanent meta progression elements, letting you push a little bit further in each successive run, with more options unlocked. You're defending humanity's last bastion against the relentless onslaught, so even while minimalist, I do think that there's something of interest to fans of the genre. Halchemist is a side-scrolling Metroidvania that pairs an alchemist girl and her golem companion in a fallen mechanical kingdom. The game centers on tag action combat and puzzle solving that lets you alternate between the two characters on the fly, Mercury, who fights on the ground using her soul-infused alchemy book, and Hendo, a floating golem fist who glides through the air to strike aerial foes and to discover hidden objects. Each character's strengths and weaknesses complement each other. Mercury can't reach high places while Hendo can't interact with objects, so success comes from clever switching to overcome platforming challenges and enemy encounters. Together, they explore Sophiatica, a once prosperous realm built by alchemists that has now collapsed into ruin, now crawling with masterless golems. The goal is to restore their friend Hendo by retrieving the shattered fragments of his soul, scattered across 8 distinct regions that include molten mining zones, flooded waterways, and cloud gardens. Combat blends precision and timing as you lure foes, swap characters, meet combos, and exploit enemy patterns, while exploration rewards observation with secret paths, rare items, and interactions with the kingdom's lingering inhabitants, and has a great art style. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. We also have the early access release of Everdream Village, a cozy 3D farming sim where you build a village from scratch on enchanted islands and shape a home for animals, villagers, crops, and community bonds, itself being the follow-up to Everdream Valley. Grow your farm by planting crops and raising animals, then expand your village by crafting buildings, decorating the land, and keeping the villagers happy so that they pitch in, harvesting crops, chopping wood, feeding animals, and more. Explore the surrounding islands by sailing to gather rare flora, collect resources, discover hidden treasures, and even meet strange creatures that can be tamed or bred. Animal husbandry goes deep, where you can breed or crossbreed animals to create unique variations with inherited traits, and can even transform into them to see the world through their eyes. The world reacts to your actions, so where you build, how you care for animals, and how you treat your neighbors and more impact daily life, relationships, and the vibe of the community. Beyond farming and village life, you cook meals, fish in scenic waters, explore underground, terraform land by shaping hills or digging rivers, and chase side quests or creature collecting, looking pretty impressive and will be for fans of the genre. Alchemy Factory is a sandbox-style medieval automation sim where you begin as an apprentice alchemist and build up a full-scale workshop that eventually runs itself, putting a spin on the factory builder in a clever way. Place machines and conveyor belts on the grid to grind herbs, extract essences, distill elixirs, and even transmute ore into valuable resources, each being a small part in a multi-step production chain that you design and optimize over time. Rather than manually crafting each item, the machines process raw materials, pipe magical liquids through arcane networks, and output potions, metals, or jewels with minimal ongoing input. Wealth comes not from constant micromanagement, but from smart workshop layout and pipeline logistics, feeding into the stock of shelves and the sale of goods to your customers. You will be able to unlock options like teleport-powered logistics to streamline movement of items, and also has multiplayer support so you can play with friends, with the medieval fantasy setting being an interesting one for factory builders, so I'm very curious about this. Other games begin with Ashes of Creation, an MMORPG that drops you into a living fantasy world where civilization itself evolves through your actions in the realm of Vera. Venture across sweeping landscapes, gather resources, craft gear, and shape towns that grow from raw nodes into bustling settlements. Dive into both PvE and PvP, explore dangerous wilderness filled with monsters and world bosses, band together for dungeon raids or mass siege warfare, or stake a claim in open world conflicts where every decision and alliance shifts the balance of power. Choose from 8 primary archetypes and, at a later stage, combine with a secondary archetype to unlock one of 64 distinct class builds tailored to your playstyle. The game's dynamic settlement system means that as players build, defend, or destroy towns, the world reacts, triggering political change, economic flux, and shifting front lines. Trade caravans, resource routes, crafting hubs, and guild politics all play as big a role as sword and spell in shaping history. With no fast travel and vast open terrain to traverse on foot or mount, every journey feels like an epic expedition. I'm not sure if this counts as indie, but it's kind of crazy to attempt to make a WoW competitor in 2025, so good luck to them and we'll see how this does. Cozyrama is a peaceful sandbox simulation that transforms empty space into magical dioramas filled with life, colour, and charm. The world begins as a blank canvas and invites creation, so sculpt terrain, choose colours, and decorate with hundreds of items, ranging from flowers and lanterns to benches and ambient props, while watching cute animals roam the land. Rather than challenge or speedrunning, the goal is pure self-expression and calm, no timers, no pressure, and no required objectives, just your imagination, shaping a cozy little corner of the world. As items accumulate and your scene evolves, the diorama becomes richer. Ambient creatures wander in, lighting and weather paint the mood, and details like lanterns, paths, or floral patches create a living space that feels uniquely yours, which can be shared with photo mode if you so choose, and true to its name, does look very cozy. Dead Format is a survival horror game centered around haunted VHS tapes that drags you into twisted cinematic nightmares. The core experience begins in a 1990s era apartment where you search for your missing brother, who has become obsessed with a mysterious new VHS format. Inserting a tape into the TV transports you into alternate worlds inspired by everything from silent era horror to 1980s body horror, which you need to navigate, scavenge for supplies, solve environmental puzzles, wield improvised weapons, and manage limited resources to survive encounters with grotesque enemies and distortions of reality. Returning to the apartment acts as a safe hub where clues, VHS tapes, and recordings are reviewed, and is the only place where game progress can be saved. As each tape opens a new horror-themed realm, the danger and ambiguity escalate with distorted visuals, eerie live-action footage, horror movie tropes, and unsettling sound design, all of which combine to blur the line between film and nightmare, looking to be doing something very interesting in the horror game space. On the surface, this game might be visually the opposite end of things as compared to the previous game, but there's something weird going on with with Eternity Egg, a 3D adventure platformer that puts you in a twisted, surreal world where high-speed movement and grotesque visuals collide. Navigate strange islands by sprinting, bouncing, wall running, sliding, dashing, and even ground pounding as you navigate nasty terrain and fight off warped enemies. One of the key features is a drivable garbage mech, which lets you traverse the overworld and reach zones otherwise inaccessible, with the blend of the two styles of movement being an interesting feature. Various hidden items and scattered collectibles litter each area, encouraging exploration and rewarding the curious who stray off the beaten path, where this does remind me of Fly Night, but with a weirder, more surreal vibe. We also have the expansion for the not-so-indie heavyweight in the form of Frostpunk 2 Fractured Utopias, the first major DLC that reworks the Utopia Builder mode by shifting the challenge from pure survival to managing competing visions of a future society. The city is still locked in a brutal freeze, but the real tension now comes from the factions that each carry their own ideals, priorities, and definition of a perfect world. These groups offer unique abilities tied to their worldview, although unlocking them requires earning trust and navigating their demands. Steering the city forward means sitting down with faction leaders, drafting laws that can completely reshape daily life, and erecting ideology-specific structures that reflect the values you choose to elevate. The DLC includes over 100 new narrative events that push you into difficult corners, refreshed faction hubs, and additional housing district variants that broaden city planning. It also introduces 2 premium tales, Doomsayers and Plague, each bringing focused storylines, plus a new late-game map that stretches the endgame even further, with the core game already being a huge hit and only looks to add to it. High Fructose is a frantic roguelite FPS where you step into the paws of a ninja fox and battle demon-corrupted fruit across shifting arenas, and yes, that is as crazy as it sounds. Momentum drives everything, so dash, wall run, double jump and weave through cluttered orchards twisted by dark magic, while slicing your way through, wielding a melee weapon in one hand and auto-firing ranged weapons with the other. Defeating waves of monstrous produce fills ingredient meters and unlocks recipe-based power-ups that heal, shield, or rain explosive death on your enemies. Between waves, stop at the shop to grab new weapons, perks and upgrades, then dive back in to face increasingly more difficult enemies. The world feels both absurd and intense, with twisted banana snakes, cherry cannons, dragon fruit dragons, and pumpkin pyros, with persistent seed upgrades and unlockables that carry over between runs, looking like a fun variant on the Bullet Heaven roguelite. Keep the Heroes Out is an asymmetric co-op turn-based dungeon defense game where you and up to 3 friends play as the monsters, scrambling to protect your treasure from waves of over-eager heroes. Choose a creature with its own traits, deck, and minion count, then coordinate with your team to plug gaps, summon reinforcements, and push intruders back before they reach the vault. Cards handle everything from movement and attacks to traps and creature placement, letting you chain actions across your small army to manage incoming danger. Building your deck adds new loot cards that let you tilt the monster towards roles like support, crowd control, or frontline bruiser, and mixing these strengths with your teammates creates the best chance of keeping the vault intact. Maps change the flow of play through different layouts and rule changes, ranging from straightforward beginner-friendly setups to tougher gauntlets packed with fights or light-hearted gimmicks that shake up expectations. The whole thing looks easy to learn, built for fast co-op sessions, and would be a natural fit for a game night with friends. Liminal City is a psychological horror exploration game set in a surreal infinite city inspired by the Backrooms mythology, where empty streets and soulless buildings shift randomly and reality itself feels very fragile. Navigate level 11, wandering between realistic cityscapes rendered in analog VHS-style visuals with unsettling ambience, unexpected level transitions, and a creeping sense that something unseen may be watching. Exploration is at the heart of this game as you roam dim hallways, peer into abandoned apartments, inspect scattered objects and search for escape, while every corner may warp into a new alien layout. The game plays out in first person with realistic camera motion and uncanny atmosphere designed to keep you on the edge even if things seem still. Fear here doesn't come from the obvious monsters or jump scares, but from disquieting isolation, shifting architecture, and the uncanny familiarity of urban decay, where every empty corridor or mismatched doorway builds up the level of dread. Milano's Oddjob collection immediately stands out with its throwback pixel art and is a small retro life sim about spending 40 summer days helping 11-year-old Milano make the most of an unexpected solo holiday. With her uncle away and her mother in the hospital, she fills her time by picking up odd jobs around town, each one presented as a small, quirky minigame. Deliver pizzas, play nurse, catch falling fruits, and even milk flying cows, with each activity paying more as her mood and skills improve. Between jobs, there are quieter moments like decorating her room, stargazing, or spending time with the cat, adding a mellow rhythm that breaks up the busier tasks and give the whole experience a nostalgic summer feel even if the season has long passed. Originally a Japan-only release, this version comes west with full English text and voiceover support, plus the option to keep Japanese voices with subtitles if you prefer. The re-release also includes modern quality of life tweaks such as faster loading, save states, and a rewind function to smooth out the rough edges, and does look like a warm-hearted entry with a lot of charm. NeverAwake FLASHBACK is a fast-paced roguelite twin-stick shooter that plunges you into ever-shifting nightmares, blending randomized stages, rapid weapon swapping, and high-intensity runs into one chaotic ride. You play as Whelm, who, despite having once escaped the horrors of her past dreams in the previous game, finds herself pulled back into terror when the nightmares return. With a plush toy partner, Gabe Chan, by her side, you navigate procedurally generated arenas filled with twisted foes born from childhood fears. Each run begins with choosing a loadout of 3 weapons and 3 accessories from a wide pool of options, where you then dive into more than 80 ever-changing stages populated with bizarre enemies like monstrous vegetables, creepy dentists, and other distorted memories. Combat remains frantic and varied, with replayability coming from hundreds of possible build combinations, random level layouts, dozens of challenging bosses, and a branching narrative with multiple endings. All of this is wrapped up in vivid, handcrafted visuals and stylized nightmare animations, delivering a twisted aesthetic that looks quite impressive. We also have the 1.0 release of Pioneers of Pagonia, a city builder strategy sim that has you restoring a scattered island world back to stability after a magical catastrophe, itself being the spiritual successor to The Settlers, with some of the original names behind that series being involved in this project. You have to manage a burgeoning settlement, so gather resources, build production chains through dozens of building types, and craft over 100 different goods, while organizing workers to farm, mine, manufacture, and defend your lands. Procedurally generated maps ensure that each campaign presents new layouts, hidden resources, and unpredictable danger, from bandits and hostile scavengers to monstrous creatures that emerge when the fog closes around the islands. As your settlement grows, thousands of citizens bustle about, building infrastructure, harvesting crops, forging weapons, or establishing trade routes, with the core challenge, in addition to external threats, is that of balancing supply chains, since mismanagement can often mean collapse rather than expansion. The full release adds a proper story-driven campaign, playable solo or in co-op, and a map editor for custom islands, impressing so far in early access, so I expect the full release to be great. RuneQuest is a long-running tabletop RPG which is now being adapted into a turn-based tactical game called RuneQuest Warlords, set in the mythic world of Glorantha, where you rise as a warlord trying to keep your tribe alive as chaos advances. The campaign focuses on 2 tribes as they push back against forces spilling out of the raster, bringing elves, lunas, monsters, and other iconic figures from the wider RuneQuest universe into play as allies or enemies depending on your choices. The setting leans heavily into runes, gods, tribal politics, and ancient myths, all of which shape the powers you command and the battles you fight. Combat unfolds on grid maps where terrain, positioning, and zones of control strongly influence how each clash plays out. Units consist of small groups of models with individual health, giving the feel of a digital tabletop skirmish, while hero units add another layer since they can be customized, upgraded, and equipped in different ways to define your army's style. Heroes also wield rune magic, letting you unleash powerful abilities that can swing a fight at the right moment. 3 playable factions offer distinct approaches through their unique heroes, monsters, cavalry, artillery, and hybrid troops, making army composition a central part of the experience, with additional features like a competitive arena mode with replayable scenarios along with multiplayer PvP adding to the package. The free-to-play Battle Royale Super Animal Royale is getting a massive update called Super Animal World, which expands the game into a full social space set inside the same island that you normally drop into. Instead of jumping straight into combat, you now explore a large social hub where you can relax, meet other players, and take part in side activities like bug catching, fishing, and hamster ball racing, or you could just chat with NPCs and other players before diving into any match type directly from the hub, returning afterwards to claim your rewards. The expansion also adds a surprising amount of narrative depth with more than 140,000 words of new story content that digs into the island's history, plus hundreds of quests and many collectibles to track down as you wander. New animals join the roster along with new locations, and the update also includes several long requested features such as cross-platform friends list, a redesigned interface, and small quality of life touches like hiding armor or muting hit sounds. Whether you played it at launch, still hop in occasionally, or hearing about it for the first time, this expansion makes the game feel much bigger and gives you plenty of reasons to revisit this game. After a little bit of a delay, we should be getting the release of Terminator 2D No Fate this week, a retro-style 2D action side-scroller that reimagines the iconic movie against the backdrop of a future war between humans and machines with pixel-perfect visuals and arcade-driven gameplay. Of course, due to the IP, this is not exactly indie, but is made by Bitmap Bureau, who made the Smash TV-like Xeno Crisis, which is awesome, and since I do love pixel art, I have to give it a mention. Take control of characters like Sarah Connor, the T-800 and John Connor, running and gunning their way through with the occasional melee attacks and stealth mechanics as you fight against relentless machines and the lethal T-1000. Weapons, power-ups, and pickups are spread across the levels, giving each a frantic momentum and a satisfying spray of destruction, and rather than a rigid, linear retelling of the movie, this mixes iconic scenes with new scenarios and branching paths, letting choices reshape outcomes and unlock alternate endings. As such, while leaning on nostalgia, this does offer something fresh as well, so if you love run and gun titles, this is a must-play. The End of History is a medieval sandbox strategy RPG with a lot of moving parts, set in a reactive world where you carve out a place for yourself rather than follow a fixed storyline. You begin as a nameless wanderer, leaving your foster home, and from there you can grow into almost any role that you want, whether that means living as a thief, merchant, knight, noble, or even rising high enough to rule a kingdom. NPCs behave independently with their own motives, forming alliances, waging war, betraying rivals, and occasionally pulling you into their political webs. Beneath all of this is a larger threat tied to growing hatred and division, hinting that the world may collapse unless you discover what links these events to the mysterious obelisk, a monumental structure said to hold forgotten knowledge and secrets. You move freely across towns, battlefields, and the wider overworld, taking on quests, trading, raiding, or capturing territory, with a mix of top-down strategy battles and RPG-style character building that makes it feel a little bit like Mount and Blade but from a different angle and seems very ambitious. It's also a surprisingly unusual project since it seems to be the work of a solo developer based in Poland, but most of their public social media and some trailers were in Japanese, making it a curious release that might be worth keeping an eye on. What is old is new again since we have the re-release of The Temple of Elemental Evil, the classic party-based Dungeons & Dragons CRPG revived and updated for a modern audience. Set in a grim fantasy world, a once-destroyed cult temple rises again and dark forces steer near the village of Hamlet, so you have to confront this reborn evil. Begin by assembling a diverse party, customizing up to 5 characters, choosing race, class, skills, feats and alignment, then explore villages, dungeons and wilderness across the world. Combat unfolds in tactical turn-based grid battles faithful to the D&D 3.5 rule set, where positioning, spells, weapon choices, and team composition shape each encounter. Outside of combat, the game weaves rich role-playing depth, including reactive dialogue, moral alignment consequences, non-linear questlines, and a world that changes based on your actions. The updated edition includes a long list of fixes and refinements such as improved enemy AI, stability patches, user interface upgrades, and quality of life improvements, aiming to preserve the original 2003 adventure while making it accessible and functional on modern PCs. So whether you played this back in the day or are coming from more modern CRPGs like the Pathfinder games, I think that there should be something of interest here. Yet another clicker incremental title is Unboxathon, all about the simple silly joy of opening mystery boxes and collecting whatever falls out. The core loop centers on popping floating bubbles to earn boxes, slicing them open, then inspecting the loot. Some items are common and nothing special, others rare, shiny or oddly amusing, giving that familiar got-it thrill every time you unbox. As loot accumulates, you sell or convert items for currency to unlock new box types, better loot quality, faster processing, and special bubble spawn upgrades that accelerate the flow of boxes and rewards. While it does look cute, I feel like there's a darker undertone with it, since it's basically about loot box design, but at least they're not charging you per open. Side note, I was in a mall recently, and I've come to discover that toy or collectible shops are just full of this kind of crap these days, which might spell darker days for the youth of today. UniDuni is a light-hearted 2D puzzle platformer built around friendship and cooperation. Guide 2 tiny friends through handcrafted levels that feature springs, boxes, cannons, spikes, and balancing boards to solve puzzles and dodge hazards as you collect berries and make your way to the end of the level. This, of course, would be best in shared screen co-op with a friend, but does also support single player where you control both characters at once. The colourful pixel art environments shift from lush forests and slimy swamps to icy mountains, blazing volcanoes and dark dungeons, each offering unique obstacles, platforming puzzles, and environmental variety. Success depends on clever timing, coordination, and clever juggling of both characters' abilities, having been in development for quite a while if I'm not mistaken, and does look pretty good. I was pretty surprised to see the early access release of VELASTER pop up on the list of new releases, since this is a 2.5D dark fantasy Souls-like, I think, which I have previewed a number of times but seems to keep getting pushed back from one year to the next, but apparently early access will be this week. Set in a bleak realm known as Malum, where demons, angels, and corrupted creatures roam after a divine war, choose your character and slash, smash, and dodge roll your way through hordes of grotesque monsters and powerful bosses. Weapons here include swords, dual blades, and heavy hammers, each offering a unique combat rhythm and feel that needs to be mastered if you don't want to die. There is brutal reactive combat, so learn enemy patterns, use precise timing, and adapt your strategy to survive as difficulty escalates. Along the way, loot and upgrades unlock stronger gear and new combos, simply oozing in style and atmosphere, looking like the hidden gem of the week. Whelm is an open-world physics playground where you play as a young penguin washed ashore on a once-thriving sanctuary that has fallen apart, and the whole island becomes a space which you can restore at your own pace. You rescue stranded animals, clean up beaches, repair scattered machines, and experiment with tools and objects to see how they interact with the environment. Many of the machines come with playful gimmicks like giant fans that let you glide across long gaps, or catapults that can launch you towards distant parts of the island, but it's a low-stakes title with no missions, timers, or leveling systems, instead leaning into relaxed exploration. It also encourages you to poke at every object to see what happens, which might include collectible hats looking oh so adorable. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. A game which I've been looking forward to is Angeline Era, a non-linear action-adventure title with a low-poly art style reminiscent of the PSX era, and of course will draw comparisons to Zelda games, but with an interesting combat system. Set in a world built on myth, where humans, fae, and angels intertwine, explore this expansive overworld where every tile on the map can hide a challenging battle, a quirky encounter, or some other hidden mystery. Combat hinges on the so-called bump slash mechanic, where you have to walk into and collide with an enemy to attack, which should give it quite an interesting, different feel. Positioning, timing, and risk-reward calculations are critical instead of mashing on buttons, with the non-linear structure of the world allowing you to wander, prod, or even skip parts of the map if you so choose. As you press onwards, you uncover trap-filled ruins, magical forests, occult mountains, mines, and towns where danger and beauty sit side by side, with this coming to us from the developer of Anodyne 1 and 2, so they know they are Zelda-style games. We also have the 1.0 release of Dunjungle, a fast-paced pixel art action roguelike platformer where you play as a monkey hero fighting a strange corruption spreading across the jungle. Each run sends you through shifting dungeons, temples, and crypts packed with odd creatures, traps, creatures, and handcrafted rooms stitched together into a procedurally generated layout. You pick up weapons, spells, and relics that stack into all kinds of different builds, with the element system letting you fuse effects with your gear so attacks can burn, freeze, shock, or blast enemies with wind depending on what you combine. Several unlockable classes add more variety, each bringing its own strengths, weaknesses, and preferred playstyle. While one death ends a run and there are no checkpoints, long-term growth continues from unlockable spells, weapons, and rescued characters who can support you in future attempts. The pixel art looks great, the monkey designs have a lot of personality, and it has an overwhelmingly positive rating through early access, so the full 1.0 version with even more content should make an already strong entry even better. Death Howl is a Souls-like tactical deck builder set in a mournful spirit's realm where a grieving mother, Ro, ventures to reclaim her lost son against the weight of grief and loss. Traverse a haunting world split into 4 realms and 13 regions filled with restless spirits, using turn-based, grid-based combat where movement and actions are governed by a shared energy pool. Build a deck from over 160 cards, equip shamanic totems, and tailor tactics to your style, whether you favor stealth, poison, raw power, or strategic support, while confronting more than 30 enemy types and ominous bosses lurking behind every corner. Interestingly, I don't think that this is a roguelite, instead relying on the bonfire equivalent, which allows you to rest and save, but also causes all enemies on the map to respawn and could be a very interesting entry. Of course, the art style and colour palette makes it stand out, not the most beautiful at first glance, but the colours chosen does give it a very otherworldly feel and is certainly a curiosity. After a small delay from November, we should have the release of Unbeatable this week, a rhythm adventure game set in a world where music is illegal and trouble follows you everywhere. The story centers on Beat, a pink-haired runaway frontwoman trying to keep her band together while dodging cops who want her shut down. You wander the city at your own pace, stopping by beaches, shops, bars, and other hangouts, talking to NPCs and helping people out before engaging in rhythm game style sequences that only uses 2 buttons but stays challenging due to the extra mechanics layered on top. Those rhythm segments show up in more than just the fight, blending into exploration and story beats, so the whole game pulses with music even when you are not on stage. The story mode leans heavily into character drama, big emotional moments, and explosive concerts backed by flashy anime-style visuals and a full double album of original songs, and will be for fans of the genre. One of the sickest looking titles is Skate Story, a surreal skateboarding action game set in a haunting smoke-filled underworld where you play as a fragile demon made of glass and pain who agrees to a simple deal with the devil: skate to the moon and swallow it to earn your freedom. To get there, you have to master the board and traverse 9 layers of eerie landscapes, and because you're made of glass, every fall shatters you in a very literal, very deadly way. You pull off ollies, kickflips, grinds, and more than 70 unlockable tricks across cracked streets, ritual plazas, and strange concrete structures shaped like something from a dream or seen through a fisheye camera that gives the world a warped, hypnotic look. Movement is tight and weighty, pushing you to understand momentum, balance, and timing as you grow from unsteady beginner into a confident skater, carving through the underworld, break apart hostile demons, help wandering spirits, take on optional trials, and tweak your customizable board while a psychedelic soundtrack drives the game forward and should be pretty awesome. Watch this video for more of the best indie games.